assume that when you're eating food, you're going to grow fat eventually, right? There's actually substances in food that can help you tame and even lose fat. The hydroxytyrosol, lycopene, the ellagic acid. I started to discover that, in fact, all of these bioactives, they were fighting body fat. They were taming the stem cells. They were actually igniting the brown fat to burn down energy and increasing metabolism. There's a tea that I write about called tea. And it turns out research has been done to show that tea lights up your brown fat, triggers your excess fat burning, decreases your stem cells, making more fat and visceral fat as well. Quite remarkable. Unexpectedly, I was starting to lose weight in ways that I could never lose before. Wait a minute, that's a little bit weird. How could you be eating more food and losing weight? People know stem cells by mostly associating with driving to the corner strip mall and getting their knees injected or their elbow injected, right? To me, as a researcher, that kind of stuff is not ready for prime time, but our body is ready for prime time. We are primed with stem cells from the time we're born. We got about 75 million stem cells that are just left over from developing in a womb, and they get stored in our bone marrow and in our other organs and our skin, and even inside our body fat. These stem cells are called out to help repair us from the inside out throughout our lives. So we are actually continuously renewed where we regenerate. And this whole idea that humans don't regenerate, but salamanders and starfish can, is wrong. Another myth that's being overturned is that humans do regenerate. We just regenerate slowly. We can't grow back an arm or a leg or a tail, but we can actually grow back our liver. We can grow back our lungs. We can even grow back parts of our brain, which is really, really amazing. And definitely we grow back our nerves. The thing about our stem cells in our body fat that can affect our metabolism is that our body fat does contain stem cells. And remember, I told you, if you have too much energy, too much fuel, too much food, too many calories, but your body's going to have to stuff the fuel into the fuel tanks, so the fat. If that's completely loaded up, now you got to create more fat. You know what it creates it from? Stem cells. All right. So our stem cells in our fat are there as reserves if we need to actually create more fuel tank. But it turns out that you can do some good things with those fat adipose cells as well. I read about some research that is being done. I took part in some of this as well. Cardiologists are working with plastic surgeons in liposuction to remove fat and to identify and isolate out the stem cells from body fat. So here's how it works. Do liposuction, you get this jar of yellow stuff, which is fat, and you pour that into a tube, and you spin it in a centrifuge, which makes it go round and around and around. And what happens when you spin it like that is that the stem cells will clump to the bottom, the fat will float to the top. You stop the machine, it's not spinning anymore, you pour off the fat, and the stem cells are what you have left. Cardiologists are taking those stem cells and they're putting it with a little saline, a little salt water, and they're injecting it into the heart. Okay. And because it's not in the fat, it's now in the heart, it will create new heart tissue. All right. And one of the remarkable things in my book I talk about is that they're doing the same thing with spinal cord injury. Now, it's research only, but it actually is in humans. There was a really famous case of a young person who injured his spinal cord at the neck level, became quadriplegic. And what they did is they actually took his body fat, spun it down exactly the same way, got the stem cells, and then took his stem cells and injected it into the spinal cord, and he was able to regain movement, which is really, really amazing. I'm telling you this to show you how powerful stem cells are. And if you imagine them in the heart or in the spinal cord, that might be something that the medical community is going to be able to use in the future. That's very promising. But that just shows you how powerful the stem cells can be inside the fat itself. You don't want to be triggering those stem cells to grow new fat by eating more food and overloading your system. Those guys can really fuel up your fat really fast, which is why sometimes when we see massive weight gain, and quickly weight gain, it's partly due to these stem cells. So what's really important is that you can tame these stem cells. There are foods that you can eat that will actually start to divert the stem cells by telling the stem cells, hey, buddy, don't be making more fat. Let's stay calm. All right. Let's just stay quiet. Don't act out. Don't make more fat. And that's really another example of a health defense system that, on one hand, could be really powerful to help recharge, renew certain body parts that we might want to have, but we have to tame it. Body fat is not bad. It's good. But what we want to do is we want to respect it, but we do need it to be tamed. We cannot allow it to actually go haywire. The lycopene in tomatoes, there's a bioactive called lycopene, it's a carotenoid. Turns out that found in tomatoes actually, do a lot of things to harmful body fat, to fight body fat. But one of the things it does, it actually tames the stem cells. So it basically tamps down the ability of fat stem cells from going haywire. That's important. That's like sending that crazy kid in the classroom who can't stop making noise and being disruptive. That's like sending him over to the principal's office, getting him out of the space, making sure he's not causing trouble. That's what tomato is one of them. Olive oil, actually, turns out, which contain lots of bioactives. And I think that's what I'm so excited about as a research scientist. Not only is it the food, but we're beginning to identify the specific substance in the food that can be beneficial. So hydroxytyrosol, oleocanthin, all these types of bioactives in olive oil, which is also present in whole olives, by the way, and it's present in olive oil, but it's also present in olive water. Olives are mostly water, not oil. So when you press olive oil, it turns out that they throw away the water right now, and they collect the oil. But the water's got a lot of these polyphenols. One of them, hydroxytyrosol, which also makes it into the oil a little bit, actually will tame your stem cells in body fat. So again, this is an example where the foods that we eat actually not only, surprisingly, actually can help us fight body fat. That's one of the things that I was so surprised at when I started to set out to do this research. You assume that when you're eating food, you're going to grow fat eventually, right? Here, actually, there's actually substances in food that can actually help you tame and even lose fat. And in fact, I'll confess something that most people don't know, is that when I wrote my first book and I turned it in and it became very successful, New York Times bestseller, I had in the back of my mind a little concern that people would become so enamored with eating all the foods that I talked about that they might gain weight. And, I'm a medical doctor, so I get concerned about this obesity epidemic. And I would be receiving these emails, thousands of emails, tens of thousands of emails, people thanking me for writing the book and then talking to me about how more empowered they feel and how much healthier they felt. Some people said, I was able to get off of my medications. I got lots of really good feedback. And my radar was on for people that might say, but I was waiting for the but I'm getting weight, because I'm eating so much of the good food that you are talking about. I never got that. What I got instead was, I distinctly remember somebody wrote in and said, and you know what? The other benefit I got from eating to beat disease is that unexpectedly I was starting to lose weight in ways that I could never lose before. And I got that one letter and I thought, well, thank God he didn't gain weight. And then I thought, wait a minute, that's a little bit weird. How could you be eating more food and losing weight? So I kind of brushed it off. And then I got more, maybe another dozen letters like that, or notes, emails like that, people reporting that they were actually losing weight. And by the time I got to like 20 or 30 of these, I thought, wait a minute, there is actually something going on. I'm a researcher, right? So we pick up clues by observing it. And I thought, what the most unusual thing is that by eating food, and these people are telling me now they're like really eating, foods to fight health defense systems. How is it that they could be eating food and losing weight? And so that's what literally triggered me to begin looking more deeply into this. It was really just the next part of my research. Actually, I was doing research on metabolism, but I wanted to dive in to see what the heck was going on. And so when we started to take a look at the bioactives in these foods, because as a researcher, a scientist, that's what I'm wondering. Is there a mechanism? Like what could possibly be in these foods? The lycopene, the hydroxytyrosol in olive oil, lycopene in tomatoes, the ellagic acid in chestnuts. I started to discover that, in fact, all of these bioactives started to also make sense to me because they were fighting body fat. They were taming the stem cells. They were preventing fat cells from loading up with extra fuel. They were actually igniting the brown fat, turning on that space heater to burn down energy and increasing metabolism. And then when you actually really took a look at the studies that were looking at specific foods studied in clinical studies, isolating the food, all right, and just giving the food to people, you started seeing that it was shrinking waist size, waist circumference, and they were losing body weight as well. And so all of a sudden it became clear to me that there was this whole other field of foods that actually can activate your metabolism, burn down harmful body fat, and against what we talked about at the very beginning of this, which is this new science of the metabolism, these 4 phases, and the harms of extra body fat, I realized that there was something that people had to read about, which is, what are those foods that if you eat, that we know what's inside them, can burn harmful body fat and unleash your inner metabolism? Who hasn't heard of the benefits of green tea, right? It's been sensationalized. I think that in the modern world, because of all this complexity, human nature tends to either create a hero or a demon. That's demonization or heroization, right? Green tea tends to be in the hero side. But for me, what I really try to bring to the forefront and into focus is that the science is actually trying to teach us exactly what it is that's in the tea. So we know tea has polyphenols. They're called catechins. We know one of the catechins is called EGCG. It's epigallocatechin 3 gallate. But don't worry about the fancy Latin scientific names. Let the scientists kind of deal with it. But there's a polyphenol in tea, catechin, that's actually really, really good for you. Not only does it cut off the blood supplies to help starve cancers, not only is it anti-inflammatory, not only does it help protect your stem cells so you can regenerate from the inside out, the fiber in green tea and some of the catechin itself is actually a prebiotic, helps to nourish your gut microbiome, take your gut bacteria, make it happy. It's antioxidant, good for your DNA, stimulates your immune system. So again, these are the attributes of only one of the substances that we know about in green tea that actually helps our body stay healthier. It turns out when it comes to your body fat, the catechin, the same substance, actually fights white fat. So it actually helps you actually lose some of the subcutaneous jiggly stuff. But more importantly, it actually helps you lose visceral fat, the harmful baseball glove fat that can be trapped even inside a skinny body. That's the stuff that chokes your organs, that grows fast. That's the fat on the back of your tongue that we talked about earlier. So the bottom line is that green tea drinkers just metabolically are healthier. And here's the other thing about green tea. Not only does it have a catechin, but it's actually just brewed in water. Whether it's hot water or iced green tea, you wind up hydrating yourself as well. And so again, you get multiple benefits. And hydration also, by the way, a lot of people don't know this, but a cup of iced tea, a glass of iced tea has got water in it. Not only got the catechins, but it's got water in it. Turns out water itself turns on your metabolism, turns on your brown fat. And basically when you drink iced tea, cold or a cup of cold water, it gets into your stomach and there's a temperature gauge in your stomach that senses that's cold. And because it's your core body temperature, what we think happens is it triggers this gauge to turn on your metabolism to try to warm up the water. It's kind of like a hot water thermos. It wants to warm it up and it turns up your metabolism. To turn up your metabolism, it activates your brown fat. Your brown fat needs that fuel to be the space heater. It draws down energy from your harmful fat, burns away some of your harmful fat. So again, this is a new way of thinking about our food. It's actually working the food is working our inner workings on our behalf of our metabolism. And by making really, really smart choices, we can actually allow ourselves to unleash our inner metabolism. A lot of people don't realize this, but matcha is super packed with polyphenols. You know why? Matcha is grown in a very particular way. 28 days before they pick the tea leaf to make matcha, they put it under shade. They basically cover it with a canopy, and the shade is there. So the tea, in response to the tea plant, in response to shade, actually wants to make more polyphenols. So they make anywhere from 30 to 300 times more polyphenols under the shade. All right. And then what happens when you pick the leaf, you cut off the stem, and then they dry and powder the entire leaf. And so that's why you have so much more polyphenol. But then you get more, rather than having it in a tea bag or loose tea leaves, you actually powder the entire leaf. So you're getting the entire leaf, including all the polyphenols. So you drink all the polyphenols, which is why you get 30 to 300 times more than just dunking a tea bag. You also get the dietary fiber. Good for your gut microbiome. So matcha tea actually is quite amazing. Actually done a study to show that matcha tea extracts can kill breast cancer stem cells.
Wow.
I'm always amazed by that because, look, as somebody who's been involved with biotech development and in cancer treatment development, finding something that could kill stem cells, cancer stem cells, like breast cancer stem cells, which is what makes cancers come back, is a holy grail. We don't have a drug for it, but here, matcha tea actually been shown in the lab to actually be able to do that. To me is actually really jaw-dropping. Then going down into even more fermented tea, because traditionally, again, this idea that in our wellness community, we wind up having all these mantras, must drink green tea and oxidized fermented tea is no good. Turns out that's not true. The science is showing that oolong tea, which is slightly fermented, also good for your metabolism. You can lose your waist, you can shrink your waist size, your waist circumference, lose body fat. And then even perhaps more surprising, if you take the extreme of fermented smoky dark teas, there's a tea that I write about called pu'er tea. This comes from a village of Pu'er that back thousands of years actually traded tea on the Silk Road. So they smoked the tea, they fermented it so it would actually survive the tea journey. And it turns out research had been done to show that pu'er tea lights up your brown fat, burns up, triggers your excess fat burning by burning the cells, decreases your stem cells from making more fat, and fats, visceral fat as well. Quite remarkable that this fermented tea that's supposedly, fermented, can't be good, doesn't have any of the polyphenol stuff, wrong. And on top of that, they've actually discovered just a few years ago that there is this tradition, 1,000-year-old tradition of making pu'er tea. There's even a bacteria, a probiotic that actually the bacteria is grown in the way that's fermented. In fact, they call it pu'ercillus, like a bacillus that actually grows in pu'er tea. So this is actually a probiotic tea, which to me is remarkable. And not only does it improve gut health, it's good for your metabolism as well. So it fires up your brown fat. So again, tea is the second part of the Holy Trinity. The third, which I always drink, and you asked me what did I want if I was coming in to do this podcast with you, and I requested a cup of coffee. Coffee has chlorogenic acid and many other polyphenols, but the chlorogenic acid not only boosts your health defenses, but it also triggers your metabolism and it stimulates your metabolism from going as well. A little bit of the caffeine, which I'm able to tolerate. Not everybody can tolerate caffeine, but I'm able to tolerate the caffeine. Caffeine also stimulates not only your kind of like your brain, but also stimulates your metabolism as well. And I'm not encouraging people to go after caffeine. I'm just saying that coffee is one of the third of the Holy Trinity. Coffee, tea, and water that actually is really, really healthy. The study that was done was taking pieces of fat from people getting bariatric surgery. So these are people that are morbidly obese and removing their fat. And the researchers actually took a chunk of the fat and grew them out in a plastic dish, petri dish, and they were able to observe that fat wants to grow. Once it's out of control, it sort of wants to keep on going out of control. And the way it does it is kind of like scary on autopilot. Fat is a highly vascular tissue, meaning that it actually requires a lot of blood vessels, just like a tumor, by the way. So when fat wants to go way beyond where it should be growing, excess body fat, the way that it supports itself is by hijacking and recruiting and growing out, extending extra blood vessels, desperately trying to find a source of blood, of nutrients and oxygen. And so what they found when they removed the fat from obese people and they put it right into a petri dish and to grow in tissue culture, the fat within days started extending its tentacles of blood vessels, searching for new nutrition in order to be able to make it grow bigger and bigger and bigger and to explode in its growth. And so this is what's really interesting is that there's an analogy between excess body fat and cancer that's growing. Early in the womb, when our bodies are still forming, blood vessels grew, and fat formed little bubble wrap packing around the fat, little formations of fat, in order to be able to store fuel. That's basically how we actually form. So our blood vessels naturally have a little rim of fat around it. They're the fuel tanks for our body. All right. What happens is that as fat mass grows, it continues to need blood supply, needs oxygen. And when you have too much fat growing, it just needs more blood. There needs more blood supply. It actually reaches out and it grabs more blood vessels to selfishly grow blood vessels towards itself. Now, if the fat grows too fast, faster it can grow, but then it can grow the blood vessels. Actually, the center of the piece of the expanding mass will start to die because it can't grow blood vessels fast enough. That's called hypoxia. And when the center of the fat that's growing, it happens in tumors as well, doesn't get enough oxygen. And that hypoxic area in the center of a fat mass is really dangerous because hypoxia causes inflammation. Basically, it's the tissue that's starting to die. It's not dead yet. And inflammatory cells just race in there. And that's why excess obesity actually is associated with inflammatory diseases, highly inflammatory diseases like cancer, like diabetes, like Alzheimer's disease, partly because it's a setup. Too much body fat sets you up to basically be a walking vessel of inflammation. I titled my book, Eat to Beat Your Diet. It's a trick title because it's not a diet book. It's kind of an anti-diet book saying that, you can improve your health without ever having to go on a diet. And it has to do with your metabolism. And your metabolism actually is very sensitive to the relationship with body fat, your fuel tanks, which is then sensitive to the food that you actually eat. And skinny people who have a lean body, right? You think you're okay because you're lean. But that's not necessarily so because the visceral fat, which is the fat you can't see, not the muffin, not the thigh, not the butt, not the jiggly part under your arm. It's packed inside your body. Can happen in a thin person. Let me tell you what visceral fat's like. The analogy I give is that if you went to a FedEx shipping place and you wanted to send some fluorescent light bulbs, all right, long, thin light bulbs that are delicate, you're going to get a thin box and you're going to actually ask for some peanuts and you're going to pack the peanuts in there, right? Now you can put the peanuts in there gently and have just enough, or you can really begin stuffing extra peanuts in so that in fact the peanuts are actually pressing on the light bulb, like almost breaking the light bulb. Now you force the thin box close and you tape it shut. At arm's length, you got a skinny box, but inside there, the pressure from those peanuts are crushing the light bulb. And that's what can actually happen in skinny people. The peanuts are the visceral fat, the dangerous fat you can't see. It's stuck inside you. You could be skinny or big body size will also have it. Everybody needs to watch out about visceral fat. And the thing about visceral fat, I think it's like a baseball glove wrapped around your organ that can choke your organs. It's easy to grow, highly inflammatory. It's one of the first places that actually stores up extra fuel. You eat too much, that extra energy, your body's going to stuff it into those fat cells, that storage tank, your visceral fat. That's actually a place that you really want to be able to fight it first. Now, a really interesting fact that people don't know. I do this with my master classes that I've been on metabolism I've been doing, and I do make it really interactive. So I basically said, true or false, first place when you gain extra body fat is around your waist. And most people say true because it's their own experience. They see it in the mirror when they gain extra weight. And actually, it's false. One of the first places that you gain extra body fat is in an area of visceral fat. It's inside. But surprisingly, it's not your belly. It's your tongue. Your tongue can get fat, even a skinny person. So let me explain this to you. So studies have been done looking at the anatomy of the tongue. It turns out the tongue is made of 3 different parts. You've got the acrobatic tip, that's a cirque du soleil of the tongue. You got the middle, that's mostly muscle, right? So when you're moving food around in your mouth, you're actually, it's not muscular, moving the food around. The rear, the last third of your tongue is big and thick, and it's actually marbled like a T-bone steak. Okay, and it's ribbed with visceral fat. And so as you start to gain weight, one of the first places to gain that extra fat is in the marbling of the last third of your tongue. One of the first places. So even a skinny person has this. How do we know this happens in a skinny person? Well, usually it's their bed partner that tells them, hey, you know what? I don't know what's going on, but you're starting to snore. right? And what's happening is that when they're gaining weight, the last part of their tongue, last third of their tongue is gaining weight, it's getting fat tongue. And when they're sleeping, their whole body's relaxed and their fat tongue is also relaxed and it obstructs their airway. All right. We call that sleep apnea. Now you snort awake and you're starting to snore on and off. And so that's one of the early clues that you're actually gaining extra body fat, visceral fat, is when your tongue gets fat. Hey, if you like that video, then you're going to love this one. Check it out.